recapture models. It gives us mortality rates, and that feeds directly into the stock assessment for the coast.
One more question for you, then I'll move on. Does that mortality data, does it jive with the number that everybody uses, this 9% catch and release mortality data?
So that 9% is part like of the model,
Right.
but that's something different. That's catch and release mortality. This is fishing, like this is fishing, directed fishing harvest mortality.
Okay, got it.
Mortality from like, yeah.
All right, I'm gonna go to John. John, can you make the case for tagging? Can you make the case as to the data provided by tagging and the benefit for the species and conservation?
Yeah, actually, I had a few slides that I could.
That'd be great, but it's going back and forth technically is a challenge. Maybe can we
You
have?
want to go in some order here?
Yeah.
That's
Some semblance of it at least. Yeah, maybe Jessica, I don't know if you could see your slides, maybe Jessica can go through her slides. Yeah. So
But
Nobody
Joe,
told me, or maybe
Sorry.
I forgot. I'm sorry.
that's
That was it.
all right.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
look here.
okay.
It's good.
Do your thing,
All
Jessica.
right, so this is just,
And then I'll
we can go to the
back.
next slide, just a little bit. So I told Joe that I just talked a little bit about the different kinds of tags there are that people use on fish. So we have pit tags, visible implant tags. Pit tags are passive integrated transponders, but you need a scanner to read those. Visible implant tags are ones that are really tiny and you can technically see them if you have like magnifying glass. External tags are the ones that I think most of us use. They're inserted or tied in the fish and then have an external streamer that can be seen when they're recaptured. Now these telemetric emitters are like acoustic tags or your satellite tags. Those are ones that are generally like implanted in the fish and then can be tracked through receivers or through satellite technology. Then we also have coated wire tags, which are really, really tiny and need basically those are primarily used for, I think, trout and stuff.
Excuse me, Jeff, I'm sorry, everyone, can you speak up too? We have
Sure.
to use our outdoor, voice,
Yeah.
the microphone that we have.
Microphone.
No
is
problem.
not
So that's, yeah, that. Go to the next slide.
Next.
So the tag types that are found in Hudson's great bass, this is not a comprehensive list, just in my experience, are the pink Floyd laminated internal anchor tags. So those are kind that my group puts out as part in the basically the cooperative, the coastal cooperative tagging group. And those are on the top right. And then Hudson River Foundation would put out yellow internal tags that look like that, only they're yellow in the belly. Some of you may have seen those before. American Littoral Society, we run into those the yellow spaghetti tags that's shown by the penny. And then there's just a smattering of other groups that put out internal anchor tags. And these are all ones that we see during our spawning stock surveys when we recapture fish. And then this was just a slide I threw in to talk about the program where we catch and tag fish. Is basically up and down the top half of the Hudson, directed on the spawning stock. You can go, I don't. That's just boat setting the net. Another boat net picture. It's a 500-foot net that will go out, and this is a picture of our electrofishing boat. We'll go. So we also do acoustic tagging and tracking to assess the stock characteristics and movement patterns. We've done some of our own, and we've also worked with Dr. David Seaford and his group to look at some of these migration patterns in and outside of the river. And this is just a map of the receiver array that's in the Hudson River that can be utilized. We also pick up other fish that agencies and people have tagged outside of Hudson. This is an example of one of the receivers that we attach to, normally put them on Coast Guard with up and down the river. kind of like easy pass for the fish. And then there's also a coastal telemetry network that cooperating agencies and researchers, universities have these detection arrays, so then people can share information and get more about their.
Jessica, am I right that they're sort of using naval detectors that were used to detect submarines?
I think so, but and there's also I know that some military places have put out their own receivers to track how fish respond or other animals respond to, you know, operations or different secret stuff that they're doing. I don't know.
But they also, they're like sort of like Cold War type detectors that were
Okay.
put in place, and some scientists, if I'm not mistaken, have made a deal with the Navy to use those.
Okay.
And there are some places that if a fish is around there, we will detect it.
Make her.
Yeah. Yeah.
We won't scramble the submarines necessarily.
Yeah.
The destroyers.
I don't know. This is just some maps of some of the receiver detections that we've gotten from some of our acoustically tagged fish. It kind of shows them going up and down the Hudson. So this is some of the research that came out a couple of years ago that we did C4 that it did identify two distinct spawning contingents in the upper Hudson and then in the lower Hudson, and it had an interesting some interesting things we noticed about were just like arrival times. There were differing arrival times with the different contingents of fish and they could potentially have consequences like higher mortality rates on those fish that are arriving sooner, leaving sooner, because they're getting kind of hammered from the people that are first out fishing and then along the coast as they make their way. So these are interesting tagging stories. I don't know if you want me to go over these now.
Love it.
Okay, so our furthest recap was Porter's Lake, Nova Scotia, which is about 1,000 miles from.
Tagged in the Hudson?
Yes. Our longest return after first being tagged was 15 and a half years, from 92 to 2007. The quickest was the same day. So,
That would be a stupid fish that I caught.
so bad. We've been tagging since 1988, and total fish tag of 28,784. We've had returns of 6,819, which is about 24%. Our longest fish was 51 inches, but the heaviest fish was 57.8 pounds. So, yeah.
Wait, do you have that percent? Oh, if you're caught outside, that's the.
So this is our industry, our overall industry recaptures by state. So on the left is commercial and on the right is the sport charter. So you can see kind of the big players and who's catching what in the Massachusetts is quite important when it comes to commercial and
So wait, can you go back to, you're showing that half of the fish that have been captured by commercial interests tagged in the Hudson have been recaught in Massachusetts?
yes,
Something like half.
yeah,
And then for sport folks, it's the other half is that it's New York.
yeah,
It's interesting.
Yeah.
yeah. I believe like the Hudson fish do spend a lot of time around in Massachusetts.
Mass
water.
people think that their fish are Chesapeake fish mostly, but I'm not sure that's right.
Yeah, it's a lot of work's been done with conflicting findings of the genetics composition over the last decades, I would say.
It's interesting.
And then this,
Jessica, in the Hudson, you say the lower Hudson, the upper, what's the delineation line there?
so then when we kind of found it was like the Newburgh area was the lower, like the lower spawning contingent, and then the upper was Kingston, Coxsackie.
Okay.
And there are smaller groups in there. It's not,
Right.
very stark lines, but those were two that really fell out of the data.
You
And
like
then-
that mortality slide?
Oh, yeah, so that was just to show you what we actually do with the tagging data. This is some mortality rates over time that I got from running them through the mark recapture model. That's it in a nutshell.
You want to talk about your cooperative angler program? You brought some kids, right?
Sure, yeah, so I run the cooperative angler program, which is an angler diary program that recreational anglers can help out by recording when they go fishing, what they catch, and that information helps inform our regulations. The stock assessment lets us know what's going on. The Marine Recreational Information Program, which is used by the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission for management purposes, doesn't run all the way up to Hudson. So any information that we can get about what people are catching, what they're seeing, what they're not catching is really important. So if anyone wants to join, I brought some logbooks and let me know. Thank you.
Do you remember the question you asked Professor Tiedemann? You
Yeah.
can ask it now.
I'm okay to ask Chuck.
Yes, we're gonna find this presentation.
Oh,
We'll
okay.
have
Thank
them
you.
going.
Do you mind if I?
Yeah, wherever.
read my-
Yeah.
John, do your thing.
Okay, so,
Professor.
in 2011, I started a program called Stripers for the Future. I call it a research and education campaign. The educational component is basically to promote best practices for catch and release. And there's a variety of components to the research. And following up on what Jessica said is we've started under my program to do telemetry tagging, acoustic telemetry tagging, and it's all done in collaboration with recreational anglers and clubs. The Berkeley Club in particular has supported it. I've worked with Jim at the Fisherman Magazine and several other clubs, including your club, in fact. She already covered a little bit of it, but the idea is, it like she said, it's an easy pass. We implant the transmitter. Each one has a unique signal. Every time it swims actually within about 100 to 150 meters of a receiver, it pings that receiver. And we're part of that same network, right? So periodically we do a download, and we're looking specifically at fish in the northern New Jersey coastal area and what their short-term and long-term, hopefully over the years, movement are. So if you go to the next one, I just have a couple examples of it. So we've done a couple outings in Sandy Hook Bay with the Berkeley Striper Club. If you're down our way, the guys from TAC Waterman have supported it. So this is my colleague Keith Dunton. It's kind of a weird thing at universities, but we have, believe it or not, regulations on working with vertebrates. So Keith is the authorized surgeon, and I'm not. So it's a simple little slice in the belly cavity. Here's the transmitter going in, and it's about 3 or 4 stitches. You go to the next one. So you get them on board. And then with Berkeley, we've done 3 outings on Island Beach, actually with surf fishing, and done the same thing, tag the fish. This was our biggest fish yet. This was this past December. And the collaboration with the club is great. You're going to hear from them, but each fish that we implant a transmitter in, they also place one of their external dart tags in it. So I'm just going to show you, these are all the fish that we've tagged so far. Their size, the acoustic number, the Floyd tag number, but more importantly, what I threw for you, which is interesting, is the number of detections. And depending on the fish, you can see some of the fish, we have very low detections, but some of them were up over 10,000 detections. And we've only been doing this for a couple of years. These are the locations roughly that they come in, but I just picked 2 fish. One we tagged in 2019 and one 2020 to show you the output of it. So if you go to the next one, this is a composite of all 21 fish in terms of where we've had hits. But go to the next one, we'll see individual fish. So this is kind of data we get, right? So we broke it out spring, summer, and fall, and then by year. Triangle is 2022, a circle is 2021. What you see here is the detections where the fish has moved. So this guy's kind of cool. because it did go up the Hudson and spend some time up the Hudson. The bigger the circle down here is the magnitude or number of detections. So we're thinking this guy might be a spawner that went up the Hudson, but then it's a pretty classic migration in summer out all the way up to the top of Cape Cod, and then in the fall coming back down to the Bight and into our waters. And if you go to the next one, this is the second fish, just to give you an example. So this one spent a lot of time out around Rhode Island and kind of eastern Long Island Sound, but then made it up also into Massachusetts by the summer. And then this one's kind of cool because it went out this way and then bounced around in western Long Island Sound and made it out to Massachusetts. But this shows you the kind of information that you can get, which with a simple tag, you get point A to point B. And we know this, but this confirms this is taking a different route back, right? It's instead of taking the south shore of Long Island in the summer to head up into New England, it's coming back through the Long Island Sound to come back down. So this is the kind of data that we get. I have a student now plotting all of these fish, and we will also be contributing this data to stock assessments, and we collaborate with other scientists and share this data. So this is really exciting for me as part of this program, because as I said, this is all based on working with recreational anglers. So the club guys catch the fish, we implant it, they tag it, and then we release it. So it's a real collaborative effort.
Can I ask a
Thanks.
question?
Yeah.
The things that you put in them and leave them in there, they're okay for the fish, like they're, and like the tags, like all that stuff doesn't.
It's going right in their belly cavity, and a couple stitches and a little antibiotic, and
But it won't hurt them, but over time.
no, and no, as far as we know, it doesn't do any damage to the fish. And those can give a signal for up to 10 years. So by doing this work that Jessica mentioned and that what we're doing, we're going to get long-term data on these fish.
What's the oldest fish you have, just to sort of prove that point? Because
Well, we just started our program in 2019.
okay.
Their program has been running a lot longer. And most of the fish we've tagged, other than that larger one, have been in the size range of about 20 to 30 inches. So hopefully, because each one is a unique one over time, 10 years from now, then I'd be able to say, look, we tagged this
So
guy.
you're
in
still getting
2019.
data from the 2019 fish that you tagged?
Oh, we do.
That kind of answers the woman's question.
Yeah.
You're still alive
No, I
4
just-
years later.
yeah.
She was worried about the fish.
Yeah, I mean,
But the fish are like, what it would do with it, like with it in there so long, or how long do those fish usually live? I don't know. I'm just curious. That's
Well,
all.
I think if they're alive 4 years now, they passed the test.
Oh, they'll live a
Yeah.
lot longer,
Yeah.
and we'll get
With the tagging.
long-term data.
That's amazing.
Right, so we'll be able to plot that fish
That's the point.
over the years, and we do a download about 3 times a year. So we just did a download in March from the network. And as Jessica said, because everybody's collaborating there, when you see it, it's amazing. There's all kinds of fish in this database. This is really a technique that's
How many are there now?
underused. Well, we've done 21 with the clubs.
And this is different from the gray satellite tags.
Yeah, Jim's gonna talk
Jim's
about
gonna talk
that.
about that.
Yeah, so these
Joe,
are
you ready?
acoustic
Well,
telemetry.
right now we queued up Emily, so I don't know if you want to do Jim first? We can do it.
Let's go to Emily. Because I work for Joe.
The questions in the back.
Is there a question?
Questions?
Gentlemen,
If we talk about the sat tag, what is the cost difference between this tag you're implanting versus satellite tag?
Those, the acoustic telemetry tags cost about $380 per tag. The receivers, the last price I saw, correct me if I'm wrong, about $2,500. So Jim will tell you about his tags. So these are different technology and obviously different costs.
To answer your question
His
now,
are more.
the tags that you guys help us with, they cost roughly $5,000 a piece.
and the difference, if I'm not mistaken, is if John's fish go outside of the transponder zone, we can't know where they went.
That's correct.
Okay? Leading to when we get to Jim. When I'm allowed to get to Jim. And Joe gives me leave to get to Jim. One of the great newspaper headlines that I remember seeing was in the Fisherman. Oops, they did it again.
Yeah,
You remember that?
yeah.
I will never forget that headline. But right now, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk to Emily from the American Littoral Society, which has been tagging fish for a very long time. And I know about their data because I once was trying to figure out more functions in Excel, just for fun, because that's my job. And I took all of your data and whatever you have to do to it, massage it to get it into a spreadsheet. And then I made a presentation on it, which found a lot of what Jessica already told us, which is that the huge reliance on one state and the other. In other words, all of our fish are going to be in somebody else's state at one period of time in their lives, if not for most of their lives, which kind of gets to this idea of, why we can't tolerate some states taking more than their fair share and not enforcing their laws, and why when you decide to put a fish back, you do it not just for yourself, but you do it for everybody up and down the East Coast. But I also found that George Bush, on the day that he announced he was running for president, went out in the afternoon with his dad to go fishing and caught a tag striped bass in 1999. And I got a chance to talk to George Bush about that. And I asked him, and he said, yeah, me and my dad went fishing that afternoon. So that's part of the data.
Yes.
How about that, Bill?
Do you want to meet that?
I'm gonna stand up as well.
Go for it.
I like walking out. So my name is Emily McGuckin. I am the fish tagging program director for the American Littoral Society. You can say it either way, literal or littoral, doesn't matter. So a little bit about our program. It's headquartered on Sandy Hook. So, if you ever feel like driving out there, coming to visit, we are at the end by the lighthouse. We are in one of the yellow houses on Officers Row. It's essentially the only yellow house that is not falling down at the moment. That was pretty easy to find. We were founded in 1965 by anglers and scientists. So, that's 58 years. I think my math is correct. So essentially what happened was some anglers and some scientists decided that they kind of wanted to see what happened when they threw their fish back. And so they started out by taking 3 glass bottles and putting letters inside of them that said, please, if you find this, write down where you found this and when you find this, and threw them into the water. They got one of them back. So that's a 33% recapture rate, pretty solid. So they decided that this would work as a project. So it was one of the first citizen science tagging programs on the East Coast. We currently have about 500 active anglers, but over the 58 years, we've had over 2,000. We tag from Maine to Florida, so unlike these groups, we tag all over the place. And we also can tag over 120 species of fish. This obviously includes stripers, but it also includes fluke, winter flounder, black sea bass, bluefish. You can tag sea robins or spotted sea trout if you want, whatever you're feeling. And at the moment, we have sold almost 1 million fish tagging cards and tags. So we are currently selling 974,000. I hope that we will be at 1 million, maybe like by the middle or end of next year, hopefully. So we have 2 different types of tags. We have spaghetti tags and lock-on tags. This one on the side is a spaghetti tag. This over here is a lock-on. You can kind of see this whitish thing. That is the lock. And we sell them in packs of 10 cards and 10 tags. The needles are sold separately. So here's kind of just the process. It's pretty simple and everyone kind of uses the same thing, but you essentially just take your needle and take your tag. It's a cooked piece of spaghetti, essentially. You put it through your needle, take your needle and put it through a fish, pull it out the opposite side, take the 2 pieces and tie them together or lock them together, depending on what type of tag you're using, and cut off the tag ends. After you do that, you would want to make sure that you write down all of your information. So this is actually Chris Palmer's.
from 2021. So he tagged a striped bass in New Windsor, New York. It was 23.5 inches long, 5.5 pounds. And it was during the HRFA fishing derby in, again, 2021. Then after you write all that stuff down, you send it in to me through the mail. I know it's a little old school, we're working on it. And I would take that and enter it into my database. So it's essentially the same information that was on the card. It has a little more information, specifically species code and zone codes. So that'll kind of come into play a little bit later in this presentation. And then that goes into our overall database, which again has almost 1 million points of data in it. You would obviously throw that fish back. Hopefully someone will recapture it again. The tags say return Literal Society, Highlands, New Jersey, in very, very small letters. Hopefully whoever recaptures it either knows about us already or is interested in us. And we go on our website, which is literalsociety.org, and click on report a tagged fish. It opens a form. You can either print that form and write down all the information, same stuff, length, weight, where you found it, species, obviously, name, all that sort of stuff, or you can just fill it in online. And then that goes to me, and I'm able to look at the new data and the old data and compare it to each other, which then goes to help with the stock assessments, like everyone else. We send ours to Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute up on Massachusetts. My deadline is coming up end of this week, so if anyone has tags, send them to me. So this is just specifically about HRFA taggers. We have had 26 members in the HRFA over 35 years, which is 1988 to now. Hopefully, again, that math is correct. They have tagged specifically, so overall they've tagged 14,302 fish in total, and 10,791 of those were stripers, and over half of those were tagged in the Hudson River. Overall, they've tagged 25 different species. Again, stripers, fluke, tog, some other interesting stuff, but those are big ones. And they've tagged in 19 different unique zones and hundreds of unique locations. So this includes, Liberty State Park, Hudson River, East River, Sandy Hook, all along the New Jersey coast and all up the Hudson River. And then out of that, they've had 809 recaptures, which equals a 5.7% recapture rate. That's pretty good especially for a program like this. There's a good amount of things that could happen in between, that fish being recaptured, but there also are things that could happen after that fish is recaptured, like the person doesn't see it and doesn't write down any information, the person sees it and doesn't care, the person sees it and forgets, the person, I guess I cover all the people things, but also, the fish, might get eaten, the fish might die, the fish might migrate to a place where we don't tag or catch those fish. So there's a large percentage of things that could happen that would affect the recapture rates. So we have some record striper information. This is Tony Evangelista, who we saw in the picture in the beginning, and Joe's. So this is a striper that he tagged in 1990 in the East River, New York, and it was recaptured in Fishers Island Sound over here in 2002, which was out for 4,273 days for 11 years, 8 months, and 12 days.
Wow.
This is another one. His fish was tagged in 1996 in Northport, New York, recaptured in Port Judith, Rhode Island in 2008, which was out for 11 years and 9 months to the day. Those are not the longest recaptures we have overall, but those are the longest recaptures that we have in this club for stripers specifically. Here are just some other ones. Kevin Morgan has a couple. Another big tagger is Glenn Blank, but I don't think he's here. We do have many more very interesting recaptures as well. These are just some that stood out and were interesting. So this is specifically a map that I created during the day today that is looking at Hudson River tagged striped bass by the members in this club. So overall, it was 8,039 total stripers tagged in the Hudson River. The circles are denoting the locations, and then the bigger circles are showing the larger amounts of fish caught. So down here would be the New York Harbor area. So that would be the largest amount of fish, and it's more than half of the fish, the total fish. And then if we go to the next slide, this is specifically looking at like, I split it up in a way that I kind of thought made sense. It's not necessarily what everyone else would do. I call this the Lower Hudson River. So the biggest area was actually in the East River area that feeds into the Hudson River. So it's this one right here. But we also had a lot of fish that were tagged at the Verrazano, Liberty State Park, and the Ambrose Channel. And then this is my last slide. This is the upper Hudson River. So the places we have here are Marlborough, New York, Newburgh, New Windsor, Beacon, and Bonneville, New York. All New York. So again, like everyone's been saying, these fish go from New Jersey to New York and all other places. But overall, our data really just kind of allows us to look at where these fish are going and kind of eventually helps us just determine whether these fish are doing okay or not doing okay. Yeah, and then also if you are in this club and want to become a member, let me know. Next. Okay, that's it.
Joe, you want to do questions for Emily now?
Yeah, anybody have questions for Emily? Charlie, you got a question?
Yeah, I am. I have a question for you. Are you gonna change your tag soon? And I'll tell you why. Because the current tags that we use, and I've tagged a fair number of fish. Well, they're really archaic and barbaric. You have to push it through the whole fish, pierce the skin on both sides into the muscle tissue. Meanwhile, the fish is out of water. It's really a horrible method. I'm sorry, I don't understand that.
That is okay.
But
Yeah, I
I
am
have some that
trying.
I have 20 or 30 I'm never gonna use. Maybe you could, okay, anyway, a return program, but are you changing your tags?
Yes, I am trying to change them. Obviously, I have to go through the correct channels. We are a nonprofit. I don't know if I mentioned that before. So all of our money comes through membership, donations, and grants. We don't get too much money coming into the program because it's kind of difficult. And
But you pay for the tags.
Yes.
So we're
Well, so-
actually paying for that, right?
yeah, but it's gonna be a lot more expensive. That's the biggest problem that I have at the moment, and most people are not willing to pay that much extra money. But I am,
money.
so it's gonna be $20 for the needles, and then it'll be about $15 for a kit of tags, which is the 10 cards and 10 tags. So I have been working with Joe to try to get this going. Again, I have to get it approved by my executive director, but I am working on it, and hopefully it'll be implemented within the next year, but hopefully even sooner than that if I can get it fully worked out.
Yeah, we're
money-wise.
hoping that by the
Financially.
next time we do the Derby, we'll have the option of going with the dark type of tag. That's a pilot program with the
So-
Littoral Society. This is what those tags look like, Charlie. I mean, it requires a special needle, which maybe the Berkeley guys will talk about in a little bit when Steve gets around to asking them.
Yeah,
But so that's what they look like. Okay.
They've been doing this pelagic species for years.
yeah,
So
yeah, I mean,
it's about that.
yes, I definitely agree. I know some of you knew Jeff, and if you knew Jeff, you know that he is very much a traditionalist. He liked to keep things the same. I came in 2 years ago and decided to switch a lot of things up. It's taking some people in the organization a little bit more time to also catch up with me. But yeah, I am trying to do that.
Thank you.
Great.
Appreciate it.
I guess there's one more question in the back there.
I'm tagging fish right now, but I haven't bought a fish with a tag in it lately, but if I do, and I catch from the can I release that fish back with a tag in it?
Yeah, definitely. We do tell people to take down the information, and then if the fish looks healthy, tag isn't, hard to read, or it's not gonna spend too much time out of the water for you to read it. we say to release it. If it's encrusted, covered in algae, it looks like the fish is hurt, we say to cut it off. But yeah, we do want to put that fish back in water so that hopefully it gets recaptured again. So then we get more and more points of data for that specific fish. So yes, definitely.
If I can interject for a second, I just want to mention, you talked about your tagging fluke and other species. So if you're in the Derby, one of the prizes, if you will, if you're one of the winners is to go out with the Littoral Society on a fluke tagging expedition, right? That's one thing. Fisherman Magazine's donated a basket of swag for us, and Professor Tiedemann also has offered to take one of the winners out on a tagging expedition, whether it's on the beach or on a boat, whatever, that's to be determined on what you guys do. But, if you're in the Derby, you get a chance to go out and tag with the experts. So that's it.
Okay, we're gonna move on to Jim now.
Yes, how did you know? Good, Jim.
We're in sync now. All right, Jim, tell me what I mean when I said, oops, they did it again.
Oops, they did it again. So, yeah, you guys all know it because it started in May of 19. My boss, Mike Caruso, owns the Fisherman Magazine, was on the Gray Fish Tag Research Advisory Council. And sometime in 2018 at a meeting, they were talking about all the mini PAT devices, the satellite tracking devices they were putting in big game in Costa Rica and Cabos and big tuna and rooster fish. And Mike had asked during the meeting, and I know you guys know the story, he said, what about striped bass? We could do the same thing with striped bass. It looks like rooster fish. So that's how it started in May of 2019. Lower Hudson River, we tagged 2 stripers right next to the Statue of Liberty. One was 34, and I believe the other one was 38 inches. And what the tag does, the mini PAT device that's on there, it almost looks like it's about that big. It looks like a Christmas ornament for a very big tree. But inside that bulb there, it collects data on light, temperature, and depth data. And you can pre-program that tag to become undone from the fish after a predetermined amount of time. So we set 2 tags in fish for 4 months. You can see from that tag at the top, it has that little antenna. So while it's collecting that data, it's tagged very much the same way as the Littoral Society tags. We also have the dart tags that we put into each fish as well. But that satellite tag goes in the fish. And after 4 months in 2019, we got the tag returns where it's collecting all this information. It will come undone from the fish ideally after, let's say, 4 months that we set it. It'll come undone from the fish. And when it hits the air, a battery inside the tag is triggered that lasts for 14 days. And the data from inside that tag will feed the satellite, the Argos satellite, as it goes overhead. So basically once or twice a day, it feeds that Argos satellite, the light, temperature, and depth data, in which the first year we got the tag returns, and the first 2 fish that we named Hudson and Freedom went well offshore.
This was a WTF moment, ladies and gentlemen.
I felt so. I mean, we sat back and our staff, when we talked to Gray Fish Tag Research and Wildlife Computers, when they told us this, our first instinct was not a printable word. I mean, we just couldn't buy it. And the first instinct was like, well, something clearly ate these fish. But they know that a tag that goes inside a larger predator, they already know what happens, and it affects the light and affects the temperature. So they knew it wasn't a predator. So we have said these first 2 tags went out to the canyon. We don't know of.
Do you have the maps, Jim, or no?
No, but I have 2 other maps.
Okay.
You guys have seen these because we've tagged now, I think 17. We've put 17 different mini PAT devices in fish since 2019. We have another event coming up in May. But the thought is a lot of folks really don't believe it. I'm still almost skeptical, except when I see a couple of tags that I'm going to show you. There is a cone of probability that goes with this that tends to, you see, it's almost like an amoeba. That as the tracking goes, we don't know exactly the path the striper took. But the data that's in the tag gives us a bunch of data points along the way. And then there are certain clusters. Ideally, we want the tags back. And strangely enough, the first year we got both tags retrieved. One in beach in Massachusetts by a beach walker. The other one came up in October, just as the striper run was getting ready to get hot in Jersey in 2019. That fall was found by a beach cleaner in Asbury Park. So we actually got those tags back that we didn't have to just rely on the satellite feed, but we were able to get these back to Gray and Wildlife Computers to open it up. But what you'll see, you probably see it here, are in these clusters. Now I will stand up. Can you go back to the, oh, actually, so this is interesting. No, go ahead. This is. Are you going forward? Go forward for a second.
One more?
Yeah, two more. This one right here. All right, so when we talk about these clusters, there's a tracking along here, whereas as we get the satellite data back, we don't have this one from the fall physically in our hands. But this is the one, this is Berkeley, so you guys are seeing this for the first time. So we named our tags after our heavy sponsors, except for the one that was before this, Uncle Fred, who was named after Fred Galafaro, was my mentor. We've lost him in September of 21. We tagged this fish off of Sandy Hook in late October of 2022. Now, if you think about the bite that we had at the Jersey Shore in November and December, when we tagged this fish right off of Sandy Hook, it spent the next 2 months zigzagging back and forth. According to our data, you can see these heavy clusters along the south shore of Long Island, up into Jamaica Bay, out in the lower Raritan, probably lower Hudson. I'm figuring there's more in this area here, but this fish stayed with us. And that's what I mean by these heavy clusters. This is just based on a satellite feed. Ideally, we'd love to get this tag back, and I don't know if this one's possible, and I'll show you why in a minute. But when we get these clusters, that improves the probability of how that satellite stuff was working, how much data was inside that tag. In the past, most of our tags showed heavy clustering right in this area of Nantucket Shoals, 5 to 12 miles off of Nantucket. So whatever stripers we've tagged in this area, some have gone down the Hudson Trench and have gone around this area in conjunction with that 2021 summer bite that we had on yellowfin and tuna at the Triple Rex. We saw these fish zigzagging back here. There's still a basis of skepticism even in me, but I've got to go with what the science shows. Going back to something that Emily said and also Jessica said it, the great thing about great fish tag research is the data is open source. We want researchers getting it. I mean, this started in May 19. This was a hold my beer moment. We got these tags and said, yeah, let's see what happens. We just assumed we're going to tag fish here. They were going to run along here, maybe up. We didn't know what was going to happen. But we've got now 4 years, going on 4 years of data that we're just hoping some researchers will want to crack this open. But the interesting thing about this fish was this is January. So this fish stayed here, and I'm seeing that this is relatively offshore at this point, but it coincides with our amazing bite that we had in Monmouth County for all of November and into December. So this fish stayed here. My reports had boats in Atlantic City still catching stripers outside in January. But you figure inside the 3 mile line. So our guys are still getting, the last boats were coming out of Cape May County at South Jersey Marina in the beginning of January. They didn't have anybody to charter anymore. But you can see that according to this data, it meshes with everything that we saw from the fall bite, is that this fish never left. It didn't start leaving until January, and at January 5th is when we don't have those clusters anymore. Now she's zipping down. The one thing that I've heard from people is like, I can't believe, I don't believe, and your data's wrong, but this is very unique for me with Berkeley. It coincides with our reports at the Fisherman magazine, all the reports from that we've gotten over the past X number of months. It didn't enter Delaware Bay, which I don't think that Delaware Bay has a striper bite anymore in the fall, which I coordinate or I correspond to the amount of bunker off the beach. I don't think these bass need to leave bunker to enter Delaware Bay anymore to root around for bait. They're staying with the bunker schools. Why you leave fish to find fish? Comes down into January. It's down into January 15th offshore. And now we see these clusters again off of the Maryland Delmarva Peninsula. And when this tag finally pops up and starts hitting the satellite, it's 27 miles east of Assateague Island off of the beach. Now, I know that data is correct. Absolutely positively, that fish is 27 miles off. And when I talked to Chuck Manny about this, he said, he starts laughing. And I said, why? Because now Chuck used to come down to Virginia Beach to fish. The Outer Banks used to have an outstanding winter fishery, and they believe that these fish wintered off the Outer Banks. Nobody's running for stripers out of the Outer Banks anymore. Those fish aren't there. The folks out of Virginia, Rudy Inlet, they're not catching stripers anymore either. But Chuck had told me that his buddy who tags for one of the universities down there, was either Maryland or Virginia, I'm not sure, wasn't finding stripers down here. So he moved up in this vicinity up above Ocean City to do